I wish I had a battle axe, but I don't. Hola, Tomas.
Hola, Dana. I can't keep the charade going any further. I know no more Spanish, and I really wish that we could actually do that. Just start the first like 5 to 6 minutes in Spanish, and people think, wait, what? I are there? Oh no.
No hablo una palabra de español. Um, how are you? What's going on?
Doing pretty good. Excited to do another episode of Two Guys Talking Toys. It's been a
Me too.
been a been a long week.
It was a long week. So many people are getting sick,
Yep.
and now I hear there's a chance of snow tonight. Have you heard that?
It is in the process of snowing. I just got back.
No.
I just got back and it was snowing. Not super hard, but snow's coming down. Just
Satan's
just
dandruff.
just to ruin everyone's day. I,
Ruin it.
I used to love snow. I used to, and you know what killed snow for me? Driving. As soon as I
Yes,
was able to
yes.
drive, I hate snow. I can't stand it.
You know
One of
what
the
the
worst
worst is
ever.
here? It's not even like we get to enjoy it in a picturesque kind of way. You know what I mean? It's like in the rare case where I lived in North Carolina, we got snow. It was all white and on the
Mhm,
trees, and
mhm.
nobody would come outside because nobody was
Yeah.
prepared for it, right?
Mhm.
And then the next day it was gone because the
Yeah.
temperature would go back up to 50 degrees. But it was beautiful. I've got nice pictures of like ice hanging from the
Mhm.
tree. It looked like decoration, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but here that doesn't happen because it gets plowed and salted, and
Yep.
the island is overcrowded, and there's too much traffic. And after a day, the snow, if you've never been to New York with snow on the ground, people, especially Long Island, and
Nope.
as you travel west into Manhattan, it's gray, like no joke, Crayola gray snow piled up on the sidewalk. It's disgusting.
It,
It's in no way when you watch those old movies like Miracle on 34th Street and all billy white snow on the sidewalk. No, that's not what it looks like. It looks like crumbled up charcoal, and it's
it's
disgusting.
it's straight out of the Zack Snyder movie. Zack Snyder
Yeah.
directing Snow. It's the New York edition. That's what we get. It's
Yeah,
it's pretty awful.
it's horrible. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Just
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 terrible. So thinking about things, let's move away from Satan's dandruff that turns gray and ruins our commute. Did you get anything interesting this week?
I did because random targets, and I don't know if viewers and listeners have been going to their
You sound
Target.
like a sniper on a bell tower when you say that.
It's been
Just
it's been a little
random targets.
just look, Target's in sight. You got to get to your Target. You have to acquire things like Clawful
Yes.
from the Filmation He-Man line, who I loved. Now, random Targets have been putting these the Filmation stuff and their Ninja Turtles He-Man crossover stuff on random sales slash clearance. Uh,
Today's episode is brought to you by the word random.
get your random stuff because I've got more things that are in fact very random. But yeah, like go to your Targets and see it because not all of them. I immediately went to a bunch of different Targets to see who they had on sale, and I 4 out of the 5 just had just regular sale price. But then there was that one that had they had Clawful and they had Two Bop Steady on like
Oh,
half
nice.
off, which is nice. And I could always use another Two Bop Steady because then I can take my extra Ratlord necks, stick those on them, put a random Snake Man head on them, and have a
You
two-headed
need to
Snake Man.
post pictures of those. You need to post
I
them.
do. I need to do that because it's such a fun mold, and these are made to be interchangeable.
If
So
two Bob Steady's half price, is that a 2-for-1 sale?
I think technically it is, or it's even it's is it more
BOGO?
half off? Getting the buy one get one steady free. I think that works. But I already had Clawful in my pile of loot, but I kind of wanted another one because I love that this version of Clawful is very clearly a Snake Man.
Yeah,
Like
and
just look
just
at him. He's like,
goofy looking. He almost
yeah,
looks Ninja Turtle-esque.
yep. And I always loved this design. And I remember being so confused the first time that I ever saw him with this design on he. I think he only appears maybe like once, maybe twice. And I was like, what Snake Man is that? What's his name? What's he do?
Right.
Does Cobra Khan hang out with him? I had all these questions, and then later found out that it was Clawful. I was like,
Didn't
this.
he have that like 80s dumb guy voice too?
Oh
Wasn't it
yeah,
like
yep, yeah. I feel like it was the same guy doing the voice for just a bunch of
yeah. Yep.
random Skeletor minions. But yeah, I picked him up at Target. I keep going back, hoping maybe they'll get another wave of things and they'll also be half off. Because the Filmation wave is super duper tempting. It's just
I like
I,
it better than the Origins one.
they
Like
do look they
yeah.
do look really good. The Evil Lyn looks really good. The She-Ra
The
looks really
Skeletor is
good.
awesome. I bought the Skeletor, of course. I
Yeah.
buy every Skeletor, but
And but at the same time, I've kind of hit, not that I don't want to get Masters of the Universe, but I've kind of hit my saturation point. Like
really,
I'm not inclined to buy the same character over and over and over. That is reserved for Transformers, which I have not been able to kick the habit of, where I'll just buy Optimus Prime over and over and over and actively lament Optimus Primes that I haven't been able to get my hands on yet, like Missing Link Optimus Prime, who's just the Generation One mold, and it's filled with modern technology so that it can transform and has articulation, but then you transform him back and he just looks like that original Gen 1 mold with the die cast and whatnot. I want that so badly. And they're clearly keeping the line going. They've done Prime in a couple different colors now. They've announced Cliff Jumper and Bumblebee, Sideswipe. Sideswipe being
I love
done.
the name Cliff Jumper.
I I think Sunstreaker is being done. And like that, the line's continuing. So then the question is, who are they going to do next? I imagine they got to get to the Seekers at some point, probably sooner than later, and they look amazing. But I shouldn't be buying those. They're kind of expensive. So
You could wait for them to do them in blocky form.
oh, don't. I have lucked out and I have acquired kind of all the blockies that are available that I've been interested in so far. But when there's another wave, I'm probably going to be up for it again because those things are so great.
I think you should start a blocky forum and refer to yourselves as a fandom as blockheads. Get on it.
Oh, we should. I should go. I should invade a bunch of random like Facebook places and start calling them all blockheads.
Good grief.
Have Lucy from Peanuts be my avatar. Don't be mad. I'm joining in the fandom. So
Yeah.
I also got, of course, I got a box that I didn't open. So
Cool.
so this, I believe I know what this is. So this is also kind of cool. So got my trusty scissors with me. They haven't abandoned me yet. And okay, this is exactly what I thought it was. Because sometimes what I receive in the box is not what I thought it was going to be. Because I lose track sometimes, and I'm like, oh, this is
more often than not. Recently, you've been good with it.
kind of pretty on point. So this is a
Oh, how cool!
yeah. So this is an Evil Horde concept 2-pack that popped up on Target, and I remember I remember when they were first announced. No, I'll send you the link to it. This is the original concept version of Hordak. I know
that's horrible.
Yeah, I'm glad that this went through a couple of revisions before they settled on a final.
He looks like that He-Man character from the movie we were looking at today.
Oh, he does. Blade.
Blade.
Yeah, he's got the weird kind of, minus the hordes. Somebody's got the weird hat and the kind of sallow face. But yeah, there's a lot of artwork online. If you look around, you can find different like a lot of artwork from the art books of different concept characters or ideas for characters that turned into other characters or just weren't used. So one of the sets was Hordak, and this is actually the concept form for Grizzlor, who I guess originally started off as like a weird Mastodon guy.
I thought that was what's his name, Tuskor or whatever.
Oh, from New Adventures.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was the inspiration for it. If they they scrapped most of this and just turned him into Grizzlor. But I wonder if someone was like, the tusks should stay. Those should be used for something. Not quite yet, because I mean, a lot of art people will do that. We'll have just tons of sketches for random things, and you're like, no, that's not. Can't use that for that. We'll set it aside, and then you go back and you're like, that's a kind of good concept. I'll use that for
That Hordak
later.
that Hordak figure kind of looks like Jack Palance.
I am not familiar with that character.
Jack Palance, the actor. He was in Batman. He played Curly in City Slickers.
He's not ringing any bells. I'll take your word for it, and I'm probably gonna see it tomorrow and be like, "Oh my, holy cow, Dana was right. Looks spot on. He does look like it." But yeah, so this excites me because this is the kind of stuff that I love seeing. I love seeing ideas that maybe didn't quite make the final cut
Yeah,
get
who made that? What
revisited.
company?
This is Mattel. These are in the Origins line, so these will be probably filling up Targets fairly soon.
That that's Jack Palance. I don't know if you can see him.
Oh, cow! There you go. Playing the role of Concept Hordak.
Is Jack Palance.
That's awesome. But yeah, I always love this kind of stuff. Like I hope this is something that they keep on doing. As the line goes on and as we get more characters and them done in different styles, I would love to see them reach back into the concept books and give us characters that either may have been like the first draft or characters that they just never got around to creating.
Those are cool figures.
Yeah, I really like these, and they're great as standalone characters, but also if you get tired of, like, if you just want a troop build this guy instead of Hordak and he's just a dude and you just want a couple of hordes of random animals or maybe Beastman to control, you just take off the horde strap and stick them behind Beastman to look menacing. This is very neat, but I hope they keep doing this. I want to see more concept characters, mostly because there's a lot of concept snake men that we never got.
Right.
So I hope that this keeps going and we get a bunch of those. Also, can we please, for the love of Pete, start putting some Snake Men in the Masterverse line? They're all in Origins, which is great. Like, I like them in Origins.
Well, they haven't introduced yet. I think that's next because they introduced the snake, with Tila and all that. So
yeah. So give us that. Also, if people were not aware already, February 11th, I believe, Masterverse Panther is going to Matty Creations. So prepare to stack up on those.
Can't wait to see what it looks like.
I'm really excited to see what he looks like, and I can't imagine the price is any less than 65. Because if we're going Masterverse, he's got to be the size of Battle Cat with a brand new head. Hopefully we get a couple of different heads. Maybe like one, either a new head or a new head plus the Ram helmet that we got for classics and that Mondo
did. That'd be cool.
There. I'd be on board for that. And I hope that's what happens. So what have you gotten? What'd you get? Your hands on?
Couple things, but I did get the new Ultimate Toxic Crusader.
Oh, that's great. Oh, the mop's so gross. I love it.
It is pretty gross. I love this. So this is the movie version. So they did the Toxic Crusaders version. This is the Toxic Avenger version from the movie. And he's pretty well sculpted. He's got the tutu thing, the gross tutu going on. He's got the
am I misreading the color on my end? Is that mop in fact brown? It's not red stained with blood of his enemies, or is it brown?
Oh no, it's brown.
Enemies.
And having the American flag on there kind of seems apropos right now.
You kind of sums up a lot of things pretty accurately.
Yeah. So he comes with this. I love how he's leaking out of his boot.
Oh, it's so great.
Yeah. So he comes with different hands to put on, and he comes with a second head.
Oh, he's so pleased with himself.
Yeah, he is. So this one's the more like grotesque, almost like the first movie, right? With the weirdo eye. And then this one looks more like he did in the latter movies. And he is very happy. He's a very looks like a jovial avocado.
That's the face of someone who's trapped a bunch of people in the elevator and just cuts one. And then just waits for everyone to slowly start
and knowing after
he get out of there.
And after he leaves the elevator, he's going home to his hot blind girlfriend.
Oh, I forgot about that. Was she blind in the movie?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
That's how she felt. It's because like Frankenstein's monster, right? The blind guy who couldn't see him. Same concept. So yeah.
That is a great Topsy.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like it.
I
And
have
I didn't open yet, but you remember the last Toxie I showed? I
mhm.
got the Kill 'em off.
Yes,
That goes with that.
man, do they that so needs to be done in Ultimates. I
Oh yeah.
really hope that Super 7 gets around to doing an Ultimates version of Kill 'Em All. I don't know if they have plans to do any more Toxic Crusaders or Toxic Avenger figures, but I really hope they get around to Kill 'Em Off. And then if they make a glow in the dark Kill 'Em Off, I'll buy that too. Because
I
I
know
have the
you
glow in
would.
the dark Toxie.
You have to. And it
He's
makes sense since he's radioactive to begin with.
yup.
You know, you brought up Toxie's mop
Mm-hmm.
and how he would thwart evil in and around New Jersey with his mop. I want to talk today about our heroes and their representation in toy form and their weapons. So Toxie's weapon of choice happens to be his mop, but I want to talk about some of the great weapons because we've talked about a lot of figures. We've
Yeah.
talked about figures, pets, and
Mm-hmm.
sidekicks. Have we talked
Yeah.
about vehicles yet?
I think we did do vehicle.
We did vehicles, we did other accessories, but
Mm-hmm.
some have very specific uh weapons. And I love, you know, and loyal listeners, I've said it a million times. I love when a vehicle takes on almost a persona as a character in a thing like the Millennium Falcon, right? Or the
Mm-hmm.
A-Team van or the
Yeah.
Ecto one. You know, that's they're
Or
part
kid
of
or a kid who actually has a personality.
right, right, yeah. That's kind of cheating a little bit. Um but sometimes weapons become part of the character, a character as well. For example, and this has been going on forever, starting with probably Excalibur, right? It's the
Yes.
same kind of thing. And
Like
that magical sword was a big part of our childhood.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's the center of a story that kicks off a great adventure. I like this a lot because there's a lot of when we play or when we played as kids, you know, you had like your typical thug or you had your stereotypical bad guy, but the ones that had a mystic weapon. We'll start off with He-Man, who had you know the sword of Grayskull. Uh,
Right.
and
The
I
original split in half
yeah, I
where you
don't
could put them together was fantastic.
I like that the original story, and I really like that they kind of try and harken back to it. That the original story was supposed to be that there were two halves of this power sword,
Yep.
and Skeletor had the bad half, and He Man had the good half, and then whoever had both of them, that was what unlocked Grayskull, and you could go in and claim its power.
Right.
And that was never a story in the cartoon because of the way the
No.
timeline
But
worked.
the
But
coolest thing was on Grayskull's door, there was the
yes,
keyhole,
yeah,
and
that
you'd
was the
put the
key you
two
needed.
swords together because one had the little, you know, that a slot to go, slot A into slot B, right?
Uh,
And you'd stick it in the lock, and there was a slide lock in there that you
yes,
would move with the sword.
which was awesome. That was what you needed to get it. But I mean, I guess even with the cartoon, even though that part of the weapon play didn't come into
Right.
play, no pun
Yeah,
intended.
because Skeletor didn't even have a side of the power
Yeah,
sword, just
and
his Havoc staff, which is
yeah, I
equally
guess to
cool.
that, yeah, in that respect, he through the cartoon had his own kind of iconic weapon, the Havoc staff, which we were just talking about. Panther, when the Four Horsemen were doing the classics line, and they were told they pretty much had carte blanche to do what they wanted, and their thought process was when they were designing Panther was, well, Panther doesn't have any like headgear or head armor like Battle Cat does, so let's just make some up for him. And I guess it makes sense to make his head armor resemble Skeletor's iconic weapon, the Havoc staff. So that's why
Yeah.
he has those cool ram horns on both the classic version and the Mondo release, which is
Oh
amazing and the
gosh.
size of a real cat. And I want one, and I can't, and it makes me sad.
I can
But
see you
uh,
laying on your couch with a
just
blankie.
just petting him.
Panther.
What a beautiful. Don't get me started on the anti Eternia battle cat that came out. That's
Oh
black with
yeah, the
red
black one.
stripes, and it's
Mhm.
gorgeous. And I'm sad that I don't own it. But getting back to the weapons, yeah, it's a cool extra feature where even if like I said, it's cool when something like that takes on a life of its own. Because if you get Skeletor, and your only exposure to it has been the cartoon, and you know that Skeletor has the Havoc staff, He Man has the sword, and your story might be something's happened to Skeletor, or maybe when like Hordak shows up and he gets the Havoc staff. Now it's a whole other story that revolves
Right.
around just this one item, and that's really cool when you're a
Yeah, and
kid.
you're like,
That,
oh snap.
yeah, you're like, what happened? And I always love I can't think offhand of a cartoon that has done it, but I know that it has been done where some bad guy makes their hardcore entrance, and everyone's like, "Who's this guy?" When he says this line, and they're like, "Well, why should we listen to you?" And they throw a weapon on the ground, and it might be broken, but it's the main
The
weapon
main
of
weapons.
the
Yeah,
bad
yeah.
guy or the good guy, and there's no words that need to be spoken, and the feeling in the room is, "Oh snap! Who is this
Right.
guy? Where did he get that weapon from? What did he do to whomever else?" Oh, even though that wasn't the scenario where it happened, we'll jump real quick to Thundercats. The Sword of Omens,
Yeah.
iconic weapon, really cool play gimmick. Uh, it's interesting seeing how different companies have tried to kind of mimic the lengthening of the sword, and how companies like Super Seven were like, "Here's a little sword and here's a big sword. Go and have
Right. And they
fun."
did that early, and then you get to play that. You know,
Yeah,
the thunder, like, and you just change it out while he's doing it, but it was still cool.
and I love how stories are connected again. Stories are connected to that weapon, whether it be in your play or in
Right.
the show. Because there's that episode. I think there's an episode where the Lunatics first show up, and I don't remember his name. Who's the short one that had no legs? Not Crusher. It wasn't. It wasn't the Hypno guy, but I forgot his name. He's a shorter guy,
Yeah, look at
like,
me. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, kind of a clownish face, and he bounced around. He had like three little like nubs that were also wheels. But there's
Yeah.
when they first show up and Lionel goes to fight them, he uses a sword. They knock him down, and that character, that lunatic, picks up the sword and he says, "So this is the mighty sword of omens," and he snaps it in half and drops it. And as a
Yeah, I
kid,
remember that.
I was
And
on the
Lionel
floor.
was like,
Yeah, like who?
because
How?
and then
How is that
Lionel
possible?
Lionel started the fight. That was a
Yeah,
lesson in pride, right, or something like
being
that,
a jerk.
patience and
and I
yeah,
and I love that happening was also what triggered the introduction of the new Thundercats. Like Bengali was the one who had to fix the sword,
yeah.
and then he didn't do anything cool for the rest of the show, and it made me sad because I love his design.
I love Thundercats when I rewatched it as an adult because of the sort of omen. So Lionel, you're watching him become a samurai, right?
Mhm.
So he's a Ronin. He's
Yeah,
got no master. He's becoming a samurai. He's
hmm,
becoming the warrior of virtue.
yeah,
And he's learning the Bushido code essentially.
yeah,
And whenever you watch those samurai movies, there's always the sword,
hmm,
right? The sword. So this once you reach a certain level, the sword is bestowed upon you,
yeah,
or you have a lot of responsibility because you are holding this sword, right?
hmm,
And that carried over into the Thundercats so beautifully.
yeah,
And I love when I rewatched it as a grown up, and I was like, "Oh, this is a story of a samurai," and it's just so well done. But you're right. When you don't even know the background of the Sword of Omens, but you
hmm,
know it's a sword of legend,
yeah,
and that's where it's coming from. To go back to He-Man, I love Skeletor and the Havoc staff because in the cartoon, He-Man would draw his sword, and
yeah,
he'd become He-Man, and
hmm,
then he'd put it away and never lose it again.
yeah,
He never used, and he'd run over, do this number, and then throw
yep.
somebody over his shoulder, right?
Somebody was getting heaved over the shoulder.
But Skeletor would just sit back, watch the battle happen, they'd be like, enough of this. And then he would shoot somebody with the Havoc staff. Like
Yeah,
you're not gonna get me. Look, I'm gonna do this. You put your sword away, and I'm gonna shoot you with my Havoc staff and my magic. And he actually used it.
yeah,
And that's what made him the coolest. You know who copied I won't say copied. You know who else had the two divided sword, the good and evil, was Black Star.
yeah. I was gonna say, wasn't that like a? I remember that concept being in something else, but I that was something they actually used in the show, wasn't it? Like that was actually a plot point.
Yeah, it was a plot in
Mhm,
the show because originally, like in the original He-Man storyline, they were fighting
mhm.
because they each wanted the other half of the sword.
Yeah,
Because then whoever controlled Grayskull controlled Eternia.
mhm,
But Black Star had the Star Sword,
mhm.
which was really angular and weird looking, but it glowed
Yeah.
in the dark, so that's right up your alley. And then Overlord had the dark half, and I think
Mhm.
his was called the Power Sword. I think it was called
Huh.
the Power Sword.
May have been.
Yeah, so they were, obviously trying to get the other half because, then you can control some cosmic what have you. But yeah, so they had pretty much that same kind of concept. And then the last big 80s sword, of course, is the blazing sword, right?
Oh, 100%.
Just you know how many times I wish I could do that? Like you just in a
Now,
grocery store and someone walks in front of you and stops and walks away from their cart and you just want to be like
now, do you think that that's a magic trick and that Voltron only knows one trick and
it's a
that you could
sleight of hand.
yeah, like you could actually summon other things. Like if you just wanted a sandwich, you could just put your hands together and just summon a hoagie. But Voltron only wants his swords, and when he does it,
Right.
that's the only thing that he makes. And they're like, you can call forth a bunch of other things, and he's like, nope, blazing sword every
Or
time.
he does this and then it's a bunch of bandanas.
It's
And
like,
at the end,
sorry,
his boxers come out like,
sorry, wrong trick, everybody. Sorry.
oh, smell this flower. uh, yeah, those that Excalibur-esque sword story gave us a lot of cool weapons when
So,
we were kids.
so here's a question: Do you are you on board for alterations to existing iconic weapons? Specifically, because I think we've talked about this before. They've tried to redo Voltron numerous times before we got the perfect reboot, which was on the Netflix series. There's a Voltron: The Third Dimension.
Right.
There was, but then there was that really really terrible kind of half CG, half 2D cartoon that came. I think it was on Cartoon Network, and
It was. And again, there were a couple of good toys out of that, but that was about it.
yeah, but one of the kind of cool gimmicks that they did, and I think they may have done this with the toys as well. I don't remember offhand that toy line. Um, they introduced this idea. It does not work like the laws of physics, and I'm talking about a show about giant transforming robots, but the the laws of physics and the way that show worked was that you had the black lion who was larger than the other lions, so he's the centerpiece. He's the typical like
Oh, I know where you're going
Transformers
with this.
Gestalt, and the four lions plug into him. And the new show put out the idea that any of the lions could become the center lion, which does not work.
No.
But for the sake of argument, that we just hand wave that away. So okay, any lion can become the centerpiece of the lion. Fine.
Not the
So
lions you're looking for.
yeah, this is the laws of physics and size whatnot do not apply, and we'll just presume that maybe they gain size from subspace because that was the thing introduced in the Transformers comic to
Right.
explain why
Well,
Megatron.
maybe the black lion reduces size into the subspace, and the other one can
Yeah,
collect it.
yeah. Apparently, that's exactly what goes on. I'll accept that because that's what was going on in the Transformers comic. That's why Megatron could
Perfect.
go from a handheld pistol to a giant robot. He put his size into subspace, and then he would pull it out when he landed. So let's go off of that. But the one of the things for them becoming the centerpiece was that it introduced the idea that the blazing sword was based on the black lion. Like that was Keith's thing. He would be the center lion, and the black lion, as Voltron's centerpiece, would say, form blazing sword. And then, as say, like Lance would become the center lion, and they would all plug into him, and he would call forth blazing cannons. And then if Hunk was
Oh, so depending on who was the
yeah, and it was actually kind of a cool concept, and I kind of wish that they had run with that. Like, give us.
well, he would form other things because he would get the throwing stars.
Yeah, he would get like the throwing
And
stars,
then
would have
yeah,
the
stuff would come.
stabbing things and whatnot. But this was the idea was that was I don't think they had any of those in the new show.
Right.
Just like
I
the
hate
sword
it.
was him, the blazing cannons were Lance. I think Hunk had like a blazing axe or something. I don't remember what
Right.
the other
Right.
ones were, but I
Right.
like the idea of that. And
I don't. I'm a traditionalist and don't mess with Voltron.
So you are that is a no, that is a thumbs down on altering iconic.
Two thumbs down. Two thumbs down.
So second scenario for you.
Oh no.
He-Man's sword in the 2000X series when everyone was on board and they were like, okay, this is the story for the power sword. There's no more two power swords. It's one sword that turns actual teenage Prince Adam into He-Man. And then for the Snake Men series, they changed up the sword so that it actually would like split apart and open, and it gave him snake armor. Now
Right.
the rumor was that they were working on a season 3, and that was going to be the season for the Horde, and he was going to have a new version of the sword that would grant him anti-Horde armor. And I don't know what that would look like.
Nope.
It would make it.
Nope. I hate
I
it.
was. Oh, really? So you are not on board for that?
I hate it.
See, I was on board for it because I liked that it didn't change the nature of the sword. It just gave it a new design and added some more power to it, so that He-Man was now better equipped to handle snakes. And I would love. I don't know if there was ever any concept art put out there of potential Horde armor or what the new sword would have looked like, but I really wish that there was.
You know why? Because I would rather see Man-at-Arms see the challenge and make the armor to fight. Like I would rather there be, I would rather see Man-at-Arms do it
Mhm.
than the sword evolve into something to fight a current and new enemy. Like, how would the sword know?
It's dealt with this evil before. It's dealt with Serpos. It's like, you're not this time, Serpos.
I don't like it. And other swords. So we'll move on to other things besides swords. But we didn't talk about the Sun Sword from Thundar, the
Oh
Barbarian.
yeah,
You know, it was cool. And of course, lightsabers, right? Every
very
we've
iconic.
discussed those sandwich swords
Mhm.
that were translucent, that were lightsabers for everybody.
I loved those things. Those are great. You get them, you break off the little the wire handle, the thin part of the handle. You
Right.
take off the little circular nubs, and you've just got a really cool, really neat blazing swords in all the colors you can imagine.
Yeah. Yep. Got a whole rainbow of them. You know, for some reason, I don't know why, the first time I could remember getting excited over a different weapon,
Mhm.
and it sort of became iconic, not so much as the other ones, but remember when the GI Joe figures first came out,
Mhm.
and Snake Eyes, who wasn't a ninja at the time, he was
Yeah.
commando, um, had Uzis, and for
Huh.
some reason everybody just thought, well, it was Snake Eyes, and he was cool to begin with, but
Yeah.
that he was cool that he came with Uzis. Like none of
Huh.
the other guys, like the other guys, basically had the same, like except for like Flash and Short Fuse came with, and
Mhm.
Bazooka had something different. But um, Snake Eyes came with Uzis,
Uh-huh.
and two of them, I think, if I remember correctly, he had two Uzis. So it was like Wild Wild West.
Mhm.
And you just thought that was the coolest thing. And then, GI Joe weapons, like there were figures that you would buy just because of the weapon. And
Yeah.
when Roadblock came out, the original one, who had that giant heavy machine gun with the big tripod that went on his backpack, um, that made it. Like
Uh-huh.
you look at the weapons and they're like, oh, look at this gun. And then, like Spearhead and others had a knife on the end of their gun, which was the coolest thing. Now,
Uh-huh.
those aren't iconic weapons, but the Snake Eyes weapon is the first time that I remember thinking about, oh, that's cool. Like start
Yeah.
paying attention to accessories and the
Mhm.
weapons that are associated with different characters.
Yeah. I I felt a
I
similar.
mean, that's obviously after Captain Caveman and his club, but
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, that's absolute 100% iconic. And if you and it and if you don't if you get a figure and it doesn't have that, it feels incomplete. Like there are certain characters like I again like I'm not huge on GI Joe, and but I also don't remember there being any specific kind, like you would know better than I would what kind of weapons, who should have what. And if I
Mhm.
got just the handful of Joes that I did have, they all just got they got cocktail swords because that was what I felt like they should have.
Right.
Because I didn't know of any weapon that they were quote unquote supposed to have, or if it was something that like
Mhm.
they needed in the show or whatever. But if you get to Transformers, and again, I don't know if this goes to familiarity with the brand or if this was something that they focused on in the shows, but or in the toy lines, but someone like Optimus Prime has a very specific
His gun is very specific. Yes. Like
and if he
if someone
doesn't have
draws a
it,
picture of Optimus Prime with a
mhm,
different gun, you're like, nope, that's wrong.
yeah, that's wrong. He's supposed to have the can. The barrel is this long. The end block does a very specific. It's in a very specific shape, and if you don't have it, same thing for Megatron. Megatron's arm cannon is a very specific shape, and the movie really accentuated that. Like their fight at the end when Prime uh, double axe handles Megatron and knocks him down. There's that
Mhm.
great moment where he's walking towards him because he had dropped his gun, and the gun's sitting there and it gleams in the light, and he picks it up because that's Prime's weapon. Um, and I always remember that, and even after Megatron is defeated and
Mhm.
they get away and they're tending to Prime, there's that quick moment of the Decepticons fleeing, and Rumble and or Frenzy is carrying Megatron's cannon alongside them because that's an important thing. And if you have a Megatron
Yeah.
figure, he needs his arm cannon or he's not complete. And Prime needs his handheld cannon, or he just doesn't seem right without it.
Right. There are characters like that. When, like, say you have the toy and you lose their weapon,
Mm-hmm.
like Green Arrow or Hawkeye. If
Yeah,
you lose their weapon, you might
that's
as
it.
well just take that
That's it.
figure, throw it in the toy box, because they're done. They might as well just be your damsel in distress.
Nope, they got nothing. It's like the Saturday Night Live skit where Hawkeye's like, I'm out of arrows. They're like, what do you mean you're out of arrows? I'm out. I got like
Going
eight.
home.
That's it. It's over.
Yeah. And those are fun characters to have because of the different
Mm-hmm.
arrows they have, and you can be creative as a kid. Like,
Yeah.
but once you lose the bow, you're like, well, and same with there are other characters, same the original like Kenner Indiana Jones figures. The little one
Mm-hmm.
had a like a whip gun action. Like he could draw a
Yeah.
gun or you could put a whip in the hand and it was just like
Mm-hmm.
a handle with a little string basically.
Yeah.
Uh but like you lose the whip and you it's like you've castrated Indy. Like
Like, what's he
who
gonna
is
do?
Indiana Jones without his whip, right?
He's just like
Now
any
he's
other
just
guy.
some professor.
Just behind a hat. What good
Yeah.
is
But I mean, and that's an iconic look. Like you'll never see a picture of Indy without the whip on his belt
yeah. Like
or in his hand, right? I mean, he needs to have the whip to
yeah.
be Indy. Because if you see Indy without his whip, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Han
like
Solo's pistol is the same way. It's a very iconic look.
oh, see, I'm not familiar with it. Like I know about like the lightsabers and all that fun stuff. And I know that Chewbacca has that. It's a gun, but also kind of looks like a
It's
crossbow.
a crossbow laser.
Yeah, I'm like,
I don't know how
gun.
that works, but
What's the is the I don't yeah I have no idea what how any of the mechanics of his weapon works. But
I
I
did
know that it is noticeably different from the other weapons in the series.
so coming from a traditionalist, I did like that uh lightsabers evolved. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love that part of becoming a Jedi Knight is making your own lightsaber. So
Yeah.
everybody's handle, I guess, the flashlight part of it, uh is unique. So you can
Yeah.
see, like I know what Vader's look like. If I saw that, I'm like,
Mhm.
that's Vader's, that's
Yeah.
Luke's, that's Ben's. Like I could do that. Um But then when Darth Maul showed up, like
Mhm.
the only good thing about Phantom Menace was Darth Maul. When he showed up
Mhm.
and lit the both sides, you're like,
Yes, that
oh,
was super
this
cool.
is the
Ow!
coolest thing ever. And then he
I was just,
separated them and was fighting too. And you're like,
yep,
I could die happy now. This is awesome.
they've done it all. I
And
had
that was
no
so
idea.
good. And then even Kylo Ren's whiny Kylo and his sort of knight, like it looked like a long sword and had that
Yeah.
kind of choppy, staticky look, and
Mhm.
it growled at you. Like I love that.
Yeah.
Like everyone always had that vroom, vroom,
Mhm.
and it was sort of
Yeah, his was
elegant.
very crackly sounding. Yeah.
Yeah, his would growl and crackle, and it was dirty and looked like it was forged in a cave. But I did like the change in the lightsabers.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
I never knew how the lightsabers were created until I think it was Clone Wars, the Clone Wars cartoon, or like when they
Oh,
had
with the
those
cyber crystals and that.
yeah, they had a bunch of shorts, and I remember there was one where they had a Jedi who was creating their own thing. And yeah, I like when they started kind of customizing the hilts because that was kind of cool, and how Dooku being like a finer gentlemanly
Oh, and it was
style, and it
angled.
was
Yeah.
slightly curved. Like that's actually kind of cool. Um, I I enjoyed the I thought I liked the again like kind of the incomplete feel of Kylo Ren's. I thought the two kind of smaller things was a little silly, but
Off the side,
yeah, I was like, are those just is it malfunctioning? Like, I'm not sure what's going on,
it
but it
seemed
was different.
unsafe for the
It
user.
was different.
But I wonder if could he, like those old long swords, they'd
Yeah.
clank and you'd come down and try and get, and you
Mm-hmm.
would catch your enemy's
Yeah.
sword. It would block
Mm-hmm.
him from coming down, hit your hand. I
Yeah.
wonder if, none of the other lightsabers had that. I don't know why nobody just went, zzz. But I wonder if it would catch.
I forgot the name of the character, so I apologize to any Star Wars fans that are watching this. But in the, I think it was it Acolyte? No, not Acolyte.
Ashoka?
Yes, there's a Sith. Well, I don't know if he's technically a Sith or not, but I think so. There's a Sith in Ahsoka, and he has what is essentially like a broadsword equivalent of a lightsaber. Because in the very first movie, if you go back and you watch it now, it's a little bit funny because their lightsabers are so incredibly long,
Yeah.
and that's just how it happened. But this is on purpose, and when he ignites his lightsaber, it comes out and it just keeps going. And it's noticeably larger than other lightsabers, and it's got
Probably
when
compensating for something.
he might be a little bit insecure, but he was an older gentleman, so this is sometimes a
There
problem.
you go. There you go.
But it was kind of cool because the implication was that this was like a broadsword style lightsaber, and it was kind of interesting because I couldn't tell whether or not it was supposed to be maybe a little bit wider than your average lightsaber, because that would have been a little cool
Yeah,
too.
yeah, that would have been
Just
cool.
had a little bit more girth to it. Um, but yeah, so lightsabers are fun. But let's switch gears and talk about Captain America,
Yes.
because that talk about iconic weapons.
Yes.
Don't give me a Captain America figure without a shield. I
No.
that otherwise, like, what are we doing? Why you give?
Uh, I have to admit, as a fan of, you know, Batman over Superman,
Mm-hmm,
and I was a big Wolverine fan, just like everybody in the world was in the
mm-hmm,
90s. Um, I love Captain America. I love what he stands for. I
yeah,
wish someday that kind of
that comes back.
pride, not the nationalistic pride,
Yeah,
but like national pride comes back. Um, I love his story.
mm-hmm,
I love that his weapon is a defensive weapon.
yes,
I mean, it's just like he's carrying the Monroe Doctrine with him.
mm-hmm,
um, I love Steve Rogers. I love Captain America.
mm-hmm,
And there were scenes in the MCU, you know, first 10 years,
mm-hmm.
um, where you're just like, yeah, that's Cap.
Yeah. Chris Evans, perfect casting. Like
Yeah,
I no better person to play Cap. If they do it again, maybe they'll find someone else. But for now,
right.
perfect
And
casting.
when they in the comics when they killed Captain America on the steps
Mm-hmm.
of the Supreme Court, and it was just so well done and heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So his shield, yes, you're right. It's absolutely iconic.
Now, do you have any versions of him where they had? I know there was a couple of versions that were released where you had the kind of the throwing action. So you had
Yeah,
the shield, but it also had that like
the
kind of whoosh.
whoosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that bit because
Those.
and he's got the hand too because you can place
Yes.
hand. It's got that open hand, so you
Yep.
pose him like yeah, so good. I
It
love
is
that.
very
That's
cool.
my favorite Captain America figure. That one.
Mm-hmm. And that's a shield where I guess I'm kind of like you, where I don't really want another version of it. Like I know
No,
there's like the Infinity War version when he didn't have it, and he
the
had
blue one, the blue and the silver.
The
Yeah.
Wakandan style shield, and those are. It's cool that he just.
Oh, I hated that. Yeah.
It's cool that he's a weapons master. So if you give him kind of anything, he can make it work. But I
Right.
I was happy to see him go back to. I mean, because even his original, I appreciate the original style for it, but I'm glad that it became just a circular shield with the red, white, and blue with the star, and that's how you know who it is and what he does, what he stands for,
Right.
and every figure that is Captain America needs to come with it no matter what.
You're almost right in that Captain America, as cool as a character he
Mhm.
really is just a vehicle to carry that symbol.
Yeah.
Like the shield, it's the story of the shield, and
Mhm.
the shield makes the man.
Yeah.
It really does.
And it doesn't really matter who's carrying it. If they carry those ideals and
Yeah,
are supposed to be what it stands for. I mean, I guess kind of going back to what you're saying about Lion-O and the Sword of Omens. We're following Lion-O's story, but then King Claudius had his own story that I would actually like to see one day.
yeah, that would be cool.
And then I don't think there's ever really a definitive far-flung future story that's been told for Lion-O and whoever he may have an offspring with and their story, which I wonder if we'll also get perhaps one day.
Yeah. Um, you know, just to switch gears a little bit, the most powerful weapon in the universe, the lantern ring.
I thought you were going to go for the Infinity Gauntlet.
No, I'm gonna carry that as a weapon. I guess it is. That's like a mass destruction weapon. But
Is that
then we start talking about the Death Star, and
what
then we
we're
just
doing
go
here?
way off the rails.
Who's walking around with that?
But
Thanos.
the Green Lantern ring, like that's iconic. Everybody
Oh,
knows
yeah,
that emblem.
100%.
When I wear my Green
Hmm.
Lantern sweatshirt,
Hmm.
I know people who aren't comic book people,
Yeah.
are like, "Hey, Green Lantern," and they're
Yes.
like, they know it. They know
Hmm.
that is what the Green Lantern is, and that the Green Lantern has the ring, and that's what it does.
Hmm.
It's a perplexing weapon. We've discussed it before, and how they say it's the most powerful, weapon in the universe, but yet nothing seems to get done.
Yeah. It's far too many stories kind of job him out to prove someone else is super strong.
Yeah.
Uh, whereas like I feel like that kind of thing should be reserved for characters like a Doomsday, a Dark Side, and not too many other characters aside from maybe Sinestro because he's working with the counter to that. Speaking of which, what core are you?
What
If you had
what
to,
color?
yeah, if you had to pick your tribe. There's a lantern nearby. Their owner of that ring is horribly slaughtered. It's got to pick a replacement. Which one's coming for you?
Well, it depends on what time of my life you're looking at. Right now, I would probably join Sinestro's Corps.
You inspire great fear.
Yeah.
Did you ever get the any of like the life size rings that came out in the I want to say like early 2000 around like 2006 during the Blackest Night is when I remember first seeing them. They may have
Yeah,
existed
I
before.
have a couple. I don't have the whole rainbow.
Mhm.
Dale sent me one. I've got a couple of variations on the Green Lantern ring.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've got a couple of I've got I don't know, maybe a half dozen Green
Yeah,
Lantern rings. I have the Flash ring. I even have a ring that has the Infinity Gauntlet stones in it.
nice.
Um,
That was
but
that was around the time when I was in Jersey and I was working in New York, so I was constantly in and out of the city. And every Wednesday, I would stop into Midtown Comics and probably buy someone from the DC Direct line because they were. It still blows my mind that they were working so closely hand in hand with the comics that a new core would be introduced, like the Orange Lanterns would be introduced, and there'd be a figure of Larfleeze just available. And when you bought them, you got like as a bonus, you would get like a little replica ring, and it was super cool. So I had in whatever bin that I had my lanterns in is just a handful. Like I could replicate that cover of Hal when he's got all the rings. I could replicate that because I've got so many random rings. I was buying so many lanterns and lantern based comic paraphernalia from Midtown Comics.
yeah, that's you can never have too many of them.
Oh, so speaking of lanterns, and I've discussed this before. Necron's scythe, even though he did not have like a huge role, he was the big bad for Blackest Night. And when he showed up and he had that side with the Black Lantern as the top with the huge side coming out of it,
Yeah.
kind of an iconic look. And when we were getting the Lantern Build-A-Figure series in was it DC Universe? That was the widespread Mattel line.
Yeah.
Uh, which I still love that line.
No, it's a great line.
I know that articulation has evolved since then, but at that time they were great. The articulation was great. The likenesses were really spot on for a majority of them, and I loved their lantern wave and them giving you multiple heads to make multiple lanterns. They put out the 5-pack where you could get all three in slightly different outfits. Their guy Gardner was good, but they also were advertising a Build-A-Figure of Necron, which everyone wanted, and it was really, for the time that it came out, it was really good. It was larger than everyone else, but the advertising picture had the side. And as Toy Girl mentioned in one of his videos where he was actually being useful, he talked about how they just didn't have, like, money ran out. Like, they pieced everything out, and there just was not a penny left to put towards that side, so it didn't come out. And then it was never released with another figure because they couldn't explain why it would be there. Like, you couldn't release like a random Black Lantern and say also this gigantic side. But McFarlane fixed that. So McFarlane released a Necron that has
good job, Todd.
Side, and it looks amazing. So it took about 20 years, but we got our giant Necron side.
Yeah, but that's you know, that weapon is iconic. The side's iconic to, like, when you see the sign in a Batman comic, you know it's the Scarecrow coming.
Yeah.
You know, those people kind of have it, and when you see the bang gun, you know it's the Joker.
Yeah, if you see a fish with a smile on it, kind of I don't know if it counts as a weapon.
Well, you know what? If you're eating goldfish crackers, they are the snack that smiles back. So
true. Hopefully they don't give you a killer smile, but they are. It is kind of iconic.
And there are other iconic weapons in the Marvel universe, of course. You know, Thor's hammer that everybody knows about, Wolverine's claws. But you know what else is oddly iconic? Michael Myers' knife. There's like nothing to it, like, but the shape of that blade and the handle is always the same in all the pictures and all the toys. If I had a shirt with that knife on it, you'd be like, that's Michael Myers' knife.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't think about that as being one of those major iconic weapons, but that knife says Michael Myers. Every time you see it, you know, that's the Michael. Or in your kitchen, you go to, I need this knife. This looks like the Michael Myers knife, right? Yeah. That's the one I'm using.
It's funny you bring that up because in the same vein, the machete has become synonymous with Jason Voorhees, which is kind of funny because if you watch the Friday the 13th franchise, Jason uses whatever is handy.
Right. I love that about him. I love when he comes across two kids like messing around in a sleeping bag, and he just kind of wraps up the end and
he's like
whacks it against the tree.
They're my weapon. So I'm not exactly sure how the machete became it's really pushed in Jason X, where they're like, this is his killing
thing,
of choice. But that's never really been a thing for him. He would if he could get you with a weed whacker, that's what you're going down with. If you get you with like a hook spear, that's
weed whacker. What is this, Maximum Overdrive?
Jason was a master. Jason was another type of weapons master, where Captain America can just use whatever he's near. So could Jason.
And you know, Freddy's claw, like that glove. You don't even need to say anything. You put a picture of that glove up, and everybody knows who it is.
Yeah, I always kind of wanted to get because I remember when replicas of those started popping up in like Hot Topic.
And some of them are really good, and some of them
and I've always kind of wanted one, but I also kind of don't want one because what am I going to do with it? Because if I was going to get one, I wouldn't want. Yeah, we've all seen like the Halloween costume with the bad braid class and whatever. No, and no one really wants that. But if I were to get one, I would want a real good replica. I used to think I was incorrect, but I used to think that Freddy's claws were retractable, like Wolverine's. They're not. But every time he would brandish them in the movie, you'd hear that cha-ching.
Because he would sound like he would purposely do that to intimidate people.
And it always sounded like they were coming out of a socket. But I mean, the only time that it happens is in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 when he's the puppet.
Yeah.
And he raises his hand and they come out there, but that's a dream sequence and not an actual thing that his claws do.
Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees and that, like, they never really frightened me when I was a kid. Like, I could watch the movies and
Yeah,
not be frightened, but uh the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie frightened me because
it's very well done.
it is very well done. But you're like, is he real? Is he
Yeah.
not real? What
Hmm.
is, like, he was more magical, and I was like, are they imagining him? How
Hmm.
is he getting in their dreams? Like, it's just scary that this person could kill you and not kill you, really. Like, you're dead, but he
Yeah.
didn't do anything to you
Yeah.
in physical life. I was like, this is just so bizarre.
It,
And at the
it's very,
time was so unique. Like, none of the other
yeah.
monsters were like that.
It was such a new concept, and it's great right up until the part that even Wes Craven hates, where they made him set it up as a potential sequel, and
Oh, and the door thing.
he pulls the mom through the door, and he's like, "I hate that so much."
Like, she
But
goes straight up and in
yup,
like a
full
like she's being
mannequin,
filed in the Dewey Decimal System,
full mannequin getting yanked through that window. But
and the
yeah,
window's this big.
but to me, in a way, that is also frightening because what's happening, and I know
Right.
it's a product of it just being kind of done badly, but uh, being younger and seeing it, I was like, whoa, what? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
So, what do you think of the Ninja Turtles weapons?
Oh,
I,
definitely iconic. And that
they're
defines them as characters.
mm-hmm. That's true. That is it because they make it a point even in like their intro and when Splinter's giving their backstory,
Mhm.
and when you got the toys, I do like that the toys were specifically sculpted so that they could wield their weapons in the most interesting ways that they could at the time.
Right.
I always loved that Donatello's hands, when you turn them, they were made such that he could hold the bow like two
Right.
in the two-handed way.
I always, and I overthink everything, right? I try to analyze everything. And I love when I say that the Ninja Turtle weapons like represent who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about Raph, and he's got the
Yes.
size,
Mm-hmm.
right? And those are close quarter
Yes.
combat weapons. So
Mm-hmm.
Raph wants to be in it. Like,
Yeah.
he wants to look you in the face and kick your butt.
Oh, I always love that they, like you said, like there was clearly thought put into
Yeah.
um who had what weapon, and I don't know if it was thought of beforehand before they started really fleshing out their personalities and
Yeah.
Raphael's rivalry with Leonardo. But I always loved that their weapons were meant to fight each
Cancel.
other,
Yep.
and Raph's weapon is you're right. It's meant for him to get up close and to hurt you, but it's also meant as a defensive weapon, which is complete. Like it's kind of everything that he stands against because he
Yeah.
wants to be in the thick of
Yeah.
it, being brutal. But his weapon is more for catching other weapons and defending himself, specifically against Leonardo. And
Yep.
when we finally got a full on showdown between those two in the 3D animated Ninja Turtles movie that came out in like the mid
That's
2000s.
the one with the elementals.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, like the plot, not the best, but that fight scene between the two, like the theater that I was in was losing their minds,
Yeah. It
and
was
it was
good.
such a cool environment to be in to watch those two
Right.
finally go at it. Like this was
Yeah.
it was phenomenal, and it hasn't been done since, which I'm a little disappointed in. But
Mhm.
yeah, what are you gonna do? But
Right.
yeah,
And of
those
course,
weapons.
Leonardo has to have the swords because he's the leader.
Yes.
Donatello's weapon is made of wood. It's a little bit softer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not metal and rigid and cold. It's a little softer. And nunchucks are fun. Michelangelo's got the nunchucks.
It is really cool, and that's another reason why I loved Slash so much, because
Yes.
before we get to you know the last Ronin, where he's got all the weapons and because he's the last one, so he has all of them. We had Slash, and it's not said, but his weapon set was like a crooked, evil, twisted version of all the Ninja Turtle weapons. And
Yeah.
I like to think that the Ninja Turtles can use all of their weapons if
Of
they had
course,
to.
they're
It's just
ninjas.
like they specialize in whatever. But at the time, you weren't. It wasn't developed enough, and you weren't really sure. So when Slash comes along, and I'm sure I just poured more into him because I love that character.
Right.
My thought was Slash knows how to use all of the weapons, and the Ninja Turtles have their own individual thing. So if they fight him, he's got the edge because he can use anything.
Right.
He's got the crooked sai, he's got the machete, he's got the crooked mace and the evil nunchaku with like nails in it. But, and I love
Well,
that.
they did switch it in the 2012 Nick series. There was
Mhm.
one episode where Splinter made them trade,
Yes.
and they were horrible.
I like that that's an element of them because yeah, because they're defined by their weapons, and
Mhm.
if you get the toys, you need to have some version of that for them to use. Even if you get into like Fast Forward where they made all their weapons futuristic, and Leonardo had like laser swords and Donatello had like a laser staff, you still need some version of that, and that defines who they are. Donatello's is interesting because here you've got the smartest member of the group who's all about tech, who makes all the inventions and everything is pretty much made out of metal. And his weapon is, for all intents and purposes, a wooden stick.
Right,
He's got to make do with it. And there's always all the jokes that Splinter just forgot about him.
right.
Just
I think it's
threw it
supposed to be
in.
that he could be a little more cerebral. It's a little
Yes.
softer. He doesn't have to go in there and slice and dice.
So, so I guess we're running low on time. So this was fun. So I have of course I have a question for you based on weapons. What would be your weapon of choice? We had an action figure line for
Oh,
your weapon
that'd
of
be
choice.
tough. There were so many good. If I were going to copy somebody, it's like we didn't even talk about the magic lasso of truth. We didn't talk about a lot of things. Um, when I talked about Snake Eyes and his Uzis being cool, for some reason I thought Triclops sword, the original, was cool
Oh,
because
yeah,
it was
cool.
long, it's
Mm-hmm.
traditional sword like, almost
Yeah,
broadsword, but that green and black
yeah.
stood out like it was really like for a worthless piece of plastic, like it looked
Mm-hmm.
cool because it
Yeah.
was green blade with that stark black handle. I thought that was cool. Off topic though. Um, I don't know. I think I would be like I would like a battle axe. I'd like
Oh, there you go.
I'd like a battle axe, but it'd have to be like not one of those big hawking like two-handed Warhammer
Mm-hmm.
battle axes. Like one I could chop, and also throw. I don't know what I would name it, but it would have to have a cool name. But yeah, I think some sort of battle axe would be
Mm-hmm.
something that would fit me well. You know why? Because it's
Yeah.
utilitarian and dangerous. Plus, it makes you look cool.
It does. Like if someone's coming at you with an axe, you have a decision to make.
Which direction to run?
Yeah, like do you really want to take on this person who is running at you with an axe who probably knows how to use it?
Right.
And like, now do you want like one of those double sided like the one that He Man came with?
Yeah, that's yeah, the battle axe with the
Okay.
double-sided. Yeah. Um, it depends. If I could find something to use as a shield, I would charge at him. If I don't
Mhm.
have a shield, I'm running away.
Uh,
What would your weapon be?
I'm gonna be kind of the cliche. I loved Wolverine's. I loved Wolverine's claws. Uh,
Yeah.
I always thought this would come down to who drew me, who was going to render me in this comic, or who was going to sculpt me
It
in
would
this.
be me. It'd be a stick figure
Because
with
I
claws
because
and
I
you'd
yeah
have a bigger fro though.
because they always had depending on who's drawing Wolverine, they're either giant Michael Myers machete blades or they're weirdly like rounded and almost like they're needles and,
Right, yeah.
and they have the slight curve. And I never liked those. I always thought those were terrible. But when they would come out as like just a large, just hunks of serrated metal, I always thought that was really cool. All the pain and his suffering aside, having claws in your hand, I think is a really
Oh
cool
no.
power.
No, I gotta tell you, Wolverine's claws give me the heebie-jeebies.
I mean, there's no acceptable science behind how they work, despite the comic coming up with multiple ways of how they fit into his forearm and whatnot and whatever.
Right. And they show that X-ray in the movie, which looked kind
Yeah.
of cool how they fit in. But I'll tell you why. Do you ever get like a splinter
Mm-hmm.
in your hand and then you rub it and it gets pulled back? Or
Yep.
like you get a nail pulled
Yep.
back?
Yeah.
I think about that
The
whenever he slices something and the pressure that would
yeah.
be pulling up.
Yep.
I, I like it's gotta. Oh, I can't deal with it. It freaks me out. It's like
Oh,
a nail being pulled up.
comic it is, but there's probably more than one where that has happened, where he's gone in to attack someone and it goes in, it cuts, and because he's exerting pressure, and whoever it is that he's fighting is either pushing back, or the material he's cutting is stronger than the force of his own flesh, and it bursts out of his fist,
rips,
and
like his hands just laying there, like,
that's exactly what happens.
I can't do it. Every time I see him slice something, I'm like, no, don't do it. Just put him back in. Don't use them.
And I wonder if that was the thought process, or part of the thought process, when there's that period of time, or even now, like sometimes he'll have those metal, those little like metal bits where it's supposed to like kind of help the claws come in and out. I wonder if those are also supposed to help keep them aligned so they don't get ripped out of his hand.
Every time, even in the movies, when he's like, and I'm like, stop.
Because when you're fighting a guy like Cyber, who's got adamantium lace skin,
right?
And that was I love the first appearance of him in Marvel Comics Presents, when he fights Wolverine for the first time, and Wolverine goes at him and he catches his claws, and he's holding them so hard that he can't retract them. And I was like, the original story for Cyber was already that he was the guy that Wolverine was scared of. Mm-hmm. And they have since taken that away from him, and I hate it. But I loved when he first appeared, and that's got to be a terrifying experience if you're Wolverine or not. And you're used to just going in and being hardcore and beating people up, and you encounter this guy who not only you can't hurt him because he's coated in adamantium, but you have no agency over yourself, and you can't retract your own weapons because this guy has them. And the only way that you can make him let go is to bite him in the face. I think that's what he does. He bites him in the face. But it's such a great moment, and he's rendered in such a great way. And that's why my weapon choice is dependent on who is going to be drawing me. If it's Sam Keith, then hand claw all the way. Give me those.
Okay. So, good to know.
All right, so watchers and listeners, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed another episode of Two Guys Talking Toys. If you're having fun and enjoying it, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, let us know what kind of weapons that you like or that you would prefer to have. At Two Guys Talking Toys, we are on both the X Place and Blue Sky. That is Two Guys Talking Toys, the number 2, no G after the talking. Same thing for the Gmail. If you would like to look at our Instagram, it is 2G Talking Toys. Take care, everybody.